far away and some are fairly close. I guess to start with, Karen said something about that I could tell a dirty joke, but I said no, not at a Fuglie reunion. I think without too much gap here, I'd like to give some special thanks to Winton and Artist Fuglie for the work they've done researching and doing all this writing of family history and everything. And I'd like to thank Karen. She's done an awful lot of work here. I think right now I'd like to ask Winton if he would come up and kind of give us some family history.
I could review this whole 195 pages, but I'm not going to. Now, in this book, you have to realize that as we get older, we don't type as well as we used to, and we hit the wrong letters on the typewriter, and we can't read too well. So you find some mistakes in it. I hope you'll just forgive me for making the mistakes. And if you see where I put down a wrong date or something, please make the correction. And if you could drop me a note sometime, my address is in there. I'd like to make a correction on the master copy that somebody can, whoever puts out another book later on, they can have it 100% correct. Okay? I've got a few more of these books left. I've got about 20 copies here. And if anybody wants to buy some more, why, you can get them here this afternoon. Any others I have, they're still in Arizona. I have a few out there. But if you will want to buy some for Christmas gifts, well, now is a good time to get them. I was thinking this morning during the church service that our Fuglie ancestors didn't become Christians until about 1,000 years ago. Before the year 2000, Fuglies in Norway were pagans. They had human sacrifices. True, the pagans in Norway did. They worshipped Thor and Odin. They had other gods and goddesses. If they had something against somebody, why, they would get into some fights, and they could even kill each other. The pagan religion in Norway was very cruel, very crude religion. King Olaf Haraldsson, one of our ancestors, in the year 1000, he was going to Christianize Norway. So he came marching up from the south, and he come into the valleys of the Valdres, where the Fuglies lived, and said, now you're going to accept Christianity. And if they did accept Christianity, well then they weren't allowed to live. So they Christianized the Valdres area very quickly. And they used to have, they replaced the hog. The hog was the shrine where they used to worship Thor and Odin, and that became the churches. And King Olaf brought in a priest, Roman Catholic priests, and they pretty soon there was 2,000 priests in Norway. Many hundreds of churches. Well, then the Black Death came in the year around 1300, 1350, something like that, and practically all the priests were killed or were died from the Black Death. And over half of the population died. Then in 1500, the Danes were in control of Norway, and that was during the Reformation. And then the Danes then said that everybody had to become Lutherans in Norway. They couldn't be Roman Catholics anymore. They said those priests could stay there, but they had to now become Lutheran priests. They had to become a Lutheran priest. So if they didn't want to become a Lutheran minister, then they had to leave. And some of them left, I guess. But the Lutherans, the Danes, they had a lot of rules with the Lutheran Church. One of them, the church attendance was mandatory. Everybody had to go to church. If you were not a landowner, if you were not a bunder, you didn't have a seat in the church. You stood in the back. It was just the landowners that could have chairs or sit in the pews. The church service was about 2 hours long. That was the length of the sermon. And the priest, he wore a black cloak, and he had a white thing around his neck. It was mandatory that every child had to be baptized before it was, I think it was 8 days old. So in the church records, you find that many children, babies, died during the winter months. And the reason for them dying is that they were carried through the snow to get baptized. If they're in the one church that the Fuglies went to, right behind the baptismal font was a crack in the wall. And if a mother had a child out of wedlock, it wasn't legal. She couldn't go into the church to watch her child be baptized, but she could look to the outside through this crack and see the priest baptizing the baby. Strange customs. As I say, church service was mandatory. Church began about in the middle of Saturday afternoon. So there was no dancing on Saturday night, there was no drinking, there was no partying on Saturday night. But they made up for it on Sunday night. Everybody went to church on Sunday morning, and then in the afternoon they visited outside the church then for a long time. This was a chant girl, and things of this nature. The church, the record, I mean the information that you get out for a book like this, all of it comes from the church records. The press kept a big book, and you open up this book, and here shows people coming into the parish, people going out of the parish. He was the official record keeper. Who was vaccinated for smallpox? It was mandatory that everybody be vaccinated for smallpox, and the press was in charge of that. You could not get married, you could not get confirmed until you had a smallpox vaccination, so he kept record of that. When you're baptized, this was marked down who your parents were, who the grandparents were, and if the child was legal or not legal. That was put down there. When you got confirmed, they had 2 years to study for the confirmation. They had a 2-hour oral exam in front of the church, and then they would get confirmed. When they got married, it said they had to announce that they were getting married for three successive Sundays, and then they showed them the marriage, who the parents were, the grandparents, what type of a job that person had. The records are very complete, I found. Deaths were recorded. When they left the parish to go to America, this was recorded. So they had it all in this big book. If the church burned down, all the records were gone. But luckily, in Valdres, where our ancestors were, all of the churches are still standing. Our ancestors were Hoosman. They were cottager people. They lived on a large farm. One farmer owned all the land, but he needed more labor, and so our ancestors had the right to have a house, a log house, and a couple of acres of land to grow food. They had to work for the owner of the farm for up to 200 days a year. In this book, I'll show you the contract they had to sign in order to be able to do that. As I say, they were required to go to church. In the Run church, which is about a mile west and north from the Fuglie farm, you find that church, and this is where our great-great-great-grandparents are buried, and our great-great-great-grandparents are buried there. Big Ole, the oldest one in the family, he became a Hoosman at Oya, so he's buried at the Oya church, which is 2 miles further up the road. When Ambior was married, she married Ole Arneson. She was my great-grandmother. They moved further down the fjord to into North Ordal, and Grandpa Fuglie was baptized in the Olness Church. You'll see these places in this map on the I think about page 2 or 3 of this book. Right across the fjord from the Low Farm, where Grandpa was born, is the Strand Church, and they may or may not have attended there, but I have a feeling that they were all going to the Aldous Church. When there were, I think, 5 or 6 children in the family. There was Big Ole. He stayed in Norway, and his descendants are still living in Norway. We have quite a few relatives named Fuglie who live in the Valdres area. We have Fuglies living in Oslo. They're all related. Knut Fuglie was my contact over there. He's our third cousin. He's related to me just like Knut, or just like Nov Fuglie from Omaha. Same type of relationship, third cousins. He's now dead. He was a well driller, but his son now has taken over the well drilling business, and he still lives at Ron. They're the descendants of Big Ole. Then we have Kirsty. Kirsty married a Hoosman and lived on a farm just across the fjord from Fuglie. And I find that her descendants are still living there. I haven't had a chance to do any genealogy work on them. The next one was Ambior. She married Ole Arneson, of course. They came in to settle in Zambrota. Then there was Knut. He died in Norway. His wife married again to Julius Belgum. They immigrated into Nebraska. We have one representative here today from the Nebraska Fuglies. Then there was, who else we have? Oh yeah, Ole M. Fuglie, who we've really been trying to find his descendants. They immigrated in 1862 to Zambrota. We find them buried in Twin Valley, Minnesota, yet nobody in Ulen seems to know that Grandpa Ole had an uncle living in Twin Valley, only 12 miles away. Strange. But as I say, the Fuglies have a long history. We were able to trace one of the maternal line back to 710 AD. I think that maybe one of our ancestors was a concubine to a prince, and that prince was tied back to royalty. But most of our ancestors were poor farmer folk. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Winton. I'd like to remind everybody, I think Winton mentioned the family books here.